If you're graduating university right now, there's a good chance you feel like you're supposed to have things figured out. You scroll through social media and see people posting about extravagant post-grad vacations or landing these massive roles and being successful, and you're just sitting there trying to figure out the immediate next step. But in the reality, most people don't have that clarity. They're just posting the highlights of the things that they're doing to make it seem like everything's all figured out. But we live, especially now, in this comparison culture where, because we have access to social media, we're constantly comparing ourselves to the people we see online. But it's good to sometimes take a reality check and come back to um, exactly how you can continue to build upon yourself. So I've been in my career for 3 years now, climbing from an entry level salary to six figures, and looking back, things are a bit different now in the markets than when I started. And if I were graduating today, here are the 5 things I would focus on. So, tip one is at some point you have to lock into the job hunt. And after I graduated, I spent a few months working my old part time job as a lifeguard. And I told people I was applying for jobs. And I was, but in reality, I was casually just sending out some resumes in the background. And I feel like because I had that job security as a lifeguard, then I was okay putting it off. But eventually, summer came to an end, and then I needed to lock back into the hunt. And that's when I decided that I had to go all in. And that's when I started to do consistency. And when I say locking in, that just means to be consistent and set aside some time in your day to review new postings or set some goals. So, for example, let me do 1 to 2 high quality applications a day and not just to span the same resume. And I've seen people online sometimes saying that they're like posting 150 resumes and they haven't heard a single thing. And it's because they're not applying correctly. And I feel like, especially now with AI reviewers and automated systems, you kind of have to tailor your resume now to the job description. So you could apply to 150 places with the same resume, but in reality, with all of these new tools that are out there, it's harder than, or it's, you have to put forth that effort to tailor your resume. And you can use AI tools because they're out there and that's what they're using to review them. So may as well meet them with what they're doing. And I don't necessarily support it either, but that's just the reality of how they're reviewing applications online now. So just to summarize, just be consistent, and that's the key to learning any skill. Makes perfect, consistency makes perfect, and just something that will definitely increase the rate at which you will hear back from these employers. So, tip number two is knowledge is an asset and to treat it like one. And one mindset shift that helped me early on was realizing that knowledge itself is wealth. And before your money starts compounding, your learning does. So, I'm not just talking about necessarily the things that you learned while doing your degree. I'm also talking about how to think in terms of how a company works. So, learning how to talk to people, understanding how to seek opportunities, as well as developing soft skills that would be relevant in order to make real connections with people and be able to support everyone that you're working with in your team. And I think that learning things even outside of necessarily having a job. So if you're graduating, for example, and we'll talk about this in the next section, I think it's important to understand that there are more skills than just, coding, for example, if you're in computers. And there's more skills to be learned, even in your day to day life. So be creative in terms of your knowledge and what you like to learn and figure out how that applies exactly to what you're doing and yourself as a whole. And right now, I'm exploring this with content creation. So this actually is only my second video, but I'm already starting to grasp the workflow. So, in a world where technology changes fast, you don't necessarily need to master everything, but you just need to stay curious and keep learning new tools and even sometimes follow the market a bit just to see what people are talking about. And especially a big thing with AI, even um, there's a lot of scariness about it, and there's a lot of things to think about in terms of AI, but It's good to also explore some of those tools as well, even as the world starts to shift with the new technology. Point number three, while you're job hunting, build something. And I think this is something I think matters a lot right now, given how hard it can be to break into entry level roles. And it's risky to put all of your energy into just applying and waiting. So while you're job hunting, I think it's worth building something on the side, which could be creating content, learning new tools, working on small projects, and experimenting with skills that you're curious about. And not just because it has to turn into a full-time thing, but it teaches you how to learn on your own, create something from scratch, communicate ideas, and stay consistent. Even if it doesn't go anywhere, you still come away with real skills, and this translates back into traditional jobs. So while you work to build something, learning how to fail and learning on your own and creating, these things you can also talk about in your interviews or things that you can put on a resume. And you'd be surprised all of the things that building something will teach you about yourself and also how you work and how you work even with a team if you wanted to collaborate with friends. So failing a few times is kind of the point, and you're building momentum, not chasing perfection, and learning how to put all of your ideas together into something that you can be proud of. And again, falling back into consistency is key. If you're consistent at something and learning and creating, then it can really show up when you start to go into your first role, or even when you start to create things, and you never know when something might turn out in a different way, and then maybe you might not even need a job in general. But that all comes with time investing into things that make you happy. Point number four, your first job isn't about the role, it's about the exposure. And something I really wish I understood earlier is that where your first job is matters way less than people think. And what actually matters is getting real exposure to the workforce. I feel like it's easy to apply for some specific jobs when you're coming out of a university or college or wherever you're at and you want to say, hey, like, let me try and get into my dream role first. But your first job is mostly about learning how to do a couple of different things. That being work with a team, communicate with different personalities, take feedback, show up consistently, and understand how work actually gets done. It's not necessarily about landing that perfect role right away. So I think that being able to diversify yourself a bit in what you're actually applying for, if it has some relevance to what you're interested in or what you've been doing throughout university, then I think being more broad to different opportunities will allow you to get that early exposure that you're looking for. And what you're learning in your role is what it feels like to be accountable to other people, collaborate, and operate in a professional environment. And that experience will carry over to any role that you eventually switch over to in the near future, or if you decided to take on your first job for a few years and eventually switch, then that experience will carry over and you'll gain things in a job you might not necessarily think is your dream job first that will lead you to where you want to go. Once you're in the workforce, things do get easier and you start to understand how teams work, how expectations are set, and how you fit into that. So instead of stressing about whether your first job is the right one, focus on whether it's giving you exposure, experience, and a chance to learn how to work with people. And finally, point number five, you're not behind, you're early. This is probably the most important one. And after graduation, it's really easy to feel like you're behind again, especially when there's comparison culture and seeing everybody landing jobs or making money, moving cities. And it can feel like you're a little behind or that you're missing out on something. But in reality, timelines aren't real. And what actually matters is whether you're slowing building skills, your confidence, or your momentum. So even if you're not landing a job necessarily right away or not seeing success in some form, sometimes things take time to marinate and enhance. And if you stay curious, keep learning, and take opportunities when they show up, then things will compound faster than you expect. And you don't need to win necessarily in your early 20s at any sort of time. You just need to build that foundation to eventually get to where you want to be and dream big and chase opportunities and look for the best foot forward. Right, so there you have it. That's my top 5 tips if you're graduating university right now and currently in the job market. And if you're feeling uncertain right now, then that's completely normal. And you're not lost. In fact, you're early. And I'm planning to make more videos like this around careers, learning, and navigating this stage of life. And if you guys like what you see, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe, and take what's useful and leave what isn't. And looking forward to make videos like this one. Until the next one.